Great.
Brilliant.
Um, Thanks, Shaman. Um, hey guys, we have Daman Soni here with us. So Daman basically has spent a lot of time with startups, both global companies that were entering India and Indian companies, startups that have been, at least in some of the larger cities, have created a large impact. Like a company like Milk Basket, and then you have MobiQuick, which is I think a lot of people would remember them from a lot of the campaigns that they did there back in 2016, 2017, and has seen a lot of that growth, scaling from some of these small brands to multi-million downloads, in the Indian consumer landscape. So Daman's here. He does a lot of consulting as well. He works with a lot of startups on their growth strategy. And he's been blogging on damansoni.com. So if you haven't checked it out, go check out damansoni.com. He keeps putting out content on these topics. And I've been trying to get him to do videos so that more people can start hearing, like people like me, where I think the word is a visual, where you watch and listen and learn than reading. So I think a lot of people will get knowledge by doing that. So Daman, welcome to this AMA. I think we have a lot of questions already that have come in. Sumit is the co-founder of World of Webinar, and they have thousands of downloads of their app. They have, Sumit probably is going to give you a quick intro. In any case, the number of events that get listed on a daily basis. Sumit, do you want to do a quick intro of what World of Webinar is?
Sure. So we started World of Webinar with the whole idea of aggregating, these so many webinars that are happening all around. And common use case was that if you want to retrieve a particular webinar information, then you can't really get that out. It was virtually very, very difficult for anyone to go back on their social channels and then retrieve it. So we started off with aggregation, we moved into discovery, and now we have started our own A+ content. And thank you so much for joining us on this day today and have an AMN. Thanks, Varun, for moderating us for this amazing growth marketing for startups. I would love to have possibly a fireside chat with them and later on have one-on-one, more selfish reasons. But over to you, Varun. And anyone, if you have questions, we already have a few questions that you entered in the registration link. We'll be taking up those questions as well. But if you have any questions that you would want to ask during the course of the discussion, please don't hesitate. Don't wait for the last moment. Keep them coming so that we know, which ones to answer and how to go about it. Over to you, Varun. Thanks.
So we're already about 7 minutes in, so I'm going to get started. So Daman, I think one of the most common questions that I think Sumit brought up, and questions that have come in the form as well, is how do you get started? What are the first two things that we need to do when you don't have money and you want to grow your brand? If you remember our podcast, we said, okay, blogging is probably the most underrated thing. Start putting out content even before you launch your website or product. Start talking about the pain point. Do you want to kind of build on that and kind of give the audience a flavor, kind of like where to start? And there's actually a follow-up question to that, is how much money to spend on branding, and if you're spending money, how much to spend on just lead gen. So if you want to kind of tackle that as probably just to kickstart what we're doing today.
Okay, I'm not surprised that that's the first question. So I kind of relate to this question a lot, yeah. And one of the reasons why I started, talking a lot about marketing and blogging specifically for startups is when I started up, I didn't have any mentor. That's because I had not worked much in the country. So a lot of stuff what I'm telling you today is stuff I didn't do in my first startup. And, gradually I started learning, and then, I started seeing the magic of things. So there are two frameworks that you need to think of when you're starting out. One is your 0 to 1 strategy, and then is your 1 to your 10 to 1000 strategy, basically. On a 0 to 1 strategy, do things that do not scale. It's perfectly fine, right? And when you say your product is, when you're about to launch, I'm assuming that you figured out a product, you've got a consumer insight, you have a fundamental belief in that product, you've written a good amount of code, you've productized it, you've got UX ready. What do? Even so, when you're getting all these things ready, I think it's good to let people know that you exist in this world and that you're building something. And fortunately, today the lines of communication have just increased. So you can start writing a blog, you can start doing podcasts, you can start getting a message out there. Okay, you do not need to do a TVC. You do not need to spend on creating a brand. You can easily start networking. You can, and when I say networking, there are the mind map below that is another 10 different strategies. For example, you are creating something which is pretty awesome. Why don't you reach out on Twitter to and DM people who you think would be prospective buyers or people who are consuming your competitor to ask them for feedback? Don't try to sell anything, right? Other than that, you can also do stuff like when you the table stakes are holding meetups and all that kind of stuff. Now let's come to specific 0 to 1 strategies which really help you grow. Your first 100 customers, lay out the red carpet for them. Do whatever it takes when they are onboarding. Figure out what went wrong, how you can help them. Once they've onboarded, if your product is at 1,000 rupees, do not think of giving a discount. That is one way of doing it, but give them freebies so that they can get more and more of their friends. See what features they want, and if those features you think will make sense for a larger scale of audience, build that feature in and get back to that person saying, you asked for it, we built it. This just doesn't work for enterprise stuff, but also for B2C, for B2C kind of folks. Other than that, when you're building a initial product, make sure that you also build referral as a part of your product. Referral is kind of built as an afterthought. But if you remember the first few customers coming onto your platform, they are the early adopters, they are the innovators, and they have some sort of a belief in you. And if they refer, they're going to refer it very passionately, as opposed to the 1 millionth customer, right? So do that. The gold in this whole launch phase is building your email list. So here's the thing, right? As a founder, if you have a pre-existing email list of, let's say, 5,000 people, you have a top of the end sales funnel. If not, start building out with a launching soon page and start building your email list the moment you start code, right? And share that wherever you have. Be shameless about it. You meet someone, tell them, what, this is my site. So I'll give you an example. I started a blog 3 months ago. I've built a list of over 2,000 people by telling people, I'm writing something. I'm writing some stuff over here which you might find interesting. Why don't you join? And you know what? If you like it, why don't you refer? So if you see my tweets, they typically end with, why don't you refer? There's absolutely nothing wrong in asking stuff like that. So we can go more and more about it. This is something I'm really passionate about. And, we'll talk more about zero cost marketing strategies. But I'll let Varun, ask some few questions and then we can see how it goes from there.
Daman, thanks for that. Can you the second part of the question is, if you are spending money in that early days to give that bump, do you spend more money on just branding, kind of like CPM, or do you spend more on CPL or CPI? So if you're trying to just generate leads and transactions in that first phase,
always performance marketing to start out with. Always. You have built out your product with a certain audience set in mind. You have spoken to some of the audience sets. You know where they live. You have some sort of an audience persona in your mind. Moment you go CPM, the amount of leakage in your media is going to be extremely high. Something as high as even 90% in early days, because you're still figuring out what kind of audience is going to bite and come onto the platform. So I would always say, go after performance marketing. whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, you want to go demographic, you want to go intent and context based, do that. If you're going to, if you are sponsoring a seminar or webinar, do you get 100 email IDs out of that who are probably prospects? If you're selling, let's say, a marketing automation tool and you're sponsoring a webinar of 100 marketers, will you get their email IDs? Okay, to reach out to them. That's the way you should be thinking about them. Brand is built by two effects. One is the search effect. That means I see a logo. Today, if someone comes from the hinterland who's not even gone to school, and if he sees a bottle of Coke, he knows that this is a bottle of Coke, although he can't read. He knows that this is a Pepsi bottle. That's brand recognition. The second is experience effect of brand, which is I've experienced the product and then the brand lives up to its promise. When you start out with the experience effect. Creating a logo, putting it out there, building trust in that is a long haul. You need users soon so that you can iterate and improve your product.
Fantastic. Daman, in the podcast, we spent a lot of time talking about how growth is a combination of product and marketing, where you're working on acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. Where we're iterating on features, we're iterating on experiments, things that we can do so that we can grow the user base. Mm-hmm. So the two of the questions that we have, I'll start with one that's, if you're looking at, identifying features in the early stage, is there any way to double down on certain features? How do you identify those specific features?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's the zero moment of truth, right? Wherein which is the customer's aha moment, which says that, okay, ye product mere liye bana hai. I want this product. This solves a problem for me. Okay. If you see there are features which cater to that or which leads a person onto that zero moment of truth, invest in that feature. Okay. The best products don't have thousands of features. The best products have taken out 900 features and just kept the bare 100 features which solves a particular customer problem. Okay. So what you need to figure out is what are the core features, what are the auxiliary features, and what are the bells and whistles. Okay. Quite often, what I've seen is a lot of startups, a lot of the bandwidth goes in developing the bells and whistles. Okay, so let me give an example why that happens. It's also because of human psychology. Suppose I tell you that there are two problems at hand. Okay, one is we need to paint this wall in the room, and here's a bucket of paint. And the second is we need to solve the jet propulsion engine ka problem. 8 out of 10 people will say, let's paint the wall. We can get over with it. But the ROI is going to be far more if you solve the jet propulsion engine rather than get your office cleaner, right? But also because there is more pain involved in solving that bigger problem. A lot of time that goes into the backlog. So if you want to make sure that you want to invest in a feature which will solve the core problem. Stuff like sharing of a particular content can be done at a later point in time, but an onboarding process. So when you're launching a new product, or even if you got a good product, onboarding is something which you will keep on improving. How do I get my user to the core value sooner with less number of clicks and in a happy state of mind? Okay, if I have to press a back button twice to come and consume a product, I'm like, what the hell's going on here, right? So you have to so those are the kind of things you need to think when you start feature building initially.
A kind of follow up to that is, how do you identify this as a large enough problem and get the organization to rally behind you, right? Because some could be trivial, though you've done your work, to identify this is probably a lever that could result in 100x growth, right? Okay. I mean, that's just a thought. I mean, it's an experiment, like you're saying. But you probably need operations to kind of support you. You need different teams to support you on a specific small change, which could be an inconvenience in the short term.
Okay.
How do you create that? And if you could give some examples from your experience, because I'm sure a Milk Basket is a very operations heavy company, right? There's so much. I mean, the business is built on ops, being able to deliver in the morning, complete a booking at midnight. Between midnight and 6 a.m., everything gets sorted out and packed, right? So any small change would affect the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
So how do you take that, like say, experiment? This is my thought, and this is what it's going to lead to, and how do you get the organization to rally behind you on that?
Okay. So I'm sensing this question is coming from a person who is in a company which is well established. It's, a Series A kind of a company which has a lot of product managers, which has a lot of tech team. Obviously, there is shortage of bandwidth on the tech side, or there's management bandwidth bottleneck. So here are a couple of frameworks to work with again. I always love frameworks because that kind of shortcuts me to the answer pretty soon. So at Milk Basket and also at MobiKwik, we always had an outcome-driven approach towards prioritizing product features. Okay. So for example, if someone comes up with a product feature or a growth idea, we always come up with a hypothesis that because I'm doing this, the cost is going to be reduced by X, or the sales is going to be increased by Y, or we're going to automate so much, we may not need to hire that many extra people. And what happens then is, the main thing is to get a lot of people into the room to test the hypothesis, right? And with any objective-driven meeting, it'll be, I don't agree with this particular hypothesis because I think there is because this will not work. So the good thing over there to do is to put a probability to every outcome. Because usually what I've seen is a lot of managers say, ki, ye to hoga nahi. This doesn't work. So the question to be asked is, what is the probability you think that this will not work? If someone says 100% probability, the trust in that person is lost immediately. Nothing is 100% certain in life, except dying. So that is the kind of conversations you need to have. Hypothesis driven, outcome driven. Okay. And there's something which my earlier boss used to tell me is like, everything in life is sales, right? We sell to the external person. We also need to start selling to the internal stakeholders. So, and because all of us within the company on the same side of the table, we want the company to grow, we want to survive, we want to thrive. Prioritization and resource allocation, which is what a CEO's main job is, right, will be done on the basis of outcomes. And if you can quantify that outcome, there is nothing that's going to stop you. So typically in growth, what we do is we come up with 15 to 20 experiments on a weekly basis. And we know 8 or 9 of them are going to fail, right? Because that's the nature of the game. There is no set path saying that, okay, you develop a social media app, you launch the app in Harvard and Stanford, and then you become as big as Facebook. No, that doesn't happen. So you come up with hypothesis, you come up with outcomes, and you start listing those experiments. And given the market conditions, given the tech prowess in your company and the maturity of the environment, some of them succeed and some of them fail. And you have to be very objective about it. You have to be very objective about the process. And what I follow is typically called the ICE metrics. Okay, you can just look it up online. Okay, which is basically ICE. Yeah. So basically, it calculates the priority basis what the outcome is going to be, how much effort it's going to, and how much effort it's going to take internally, right? So you may say, okay, I want to build a referral tool, but tech is going to say, okay, that's going to take me 3 months. Okay, and then you'll be like, you know what? Let's just put a WhatsApp logo over there so that people can share on WhatsApp. Okay, so that solves the immediate problem, and while we park this bigger problem for a later point in time.
Daman, from that standpoint, right? We're saying that this trying to get internal stakeholders and selling to them and getting them on board is a process that needs to be followed. But does that also mean that it also depends on the startup's ability to support experimentation? Because then that's a top-down thing, right? So the management needs to embrace the experimentation kind of behavior. And
okay, let me put it this way. If you're a startup, you have to grow faster than the incumbent. That's what a startup is, right? And if you have to grow faster, you have to make more mistakes. Because if you're going to keep trying the standard way, you're going to keep going at 10 kilometers per hour. But if you want to build something really, really fast enough, you are going to fail quite a lot. So by definition, startups need to have an experimenting outlook to be able to grow. There should be no fear of failure on the growth team, because then your growth ideas will get stalled. They will not, people will get scared to say something. So if you fail so I'll give you an idea what the way I used to run my team. My team's appraisals, team members' appraisals would not get impacted if they failed. My team members' appraisals would get impacted if none of their ideas are getting put into the Excel sheet and they're not being scheduled in the month. So if for 3 months none of your ideas are approved, means you're not coming up with good hypotheses, you're not coming up with cross-functional ideas. So and the way to do this is management needs to ensure that yes, the team will fail. That's a part of the process. What I want to do is, if I'm spending 100 rupees on, let's say, paid marketing, I'll put around 5 to 6 rupees on experimenting. No questions asked. For example, one of the startups, I can't name them, a huge startup right now, they're really scaling up. When I started out with them, they said, you know what, we maxed out in a paid acquisition. And when I asked them what's happening, they said, you know, we've just been using Facebook. We've topped out on Facebook. Google's not worked for us.
Topped out. You're saying that it's plateauing. That means
it's plateauing in the sense
if
I throw more money at Facebook, my CAC just increases quite a lot. So and that's an unsustainable CAC. So I went with the hypothesis that we have not explored other channels. So what I asked them is, tell me your failures in Google, what you did. You know, I could see that in 30 days, Google is around 25% of the business, right? Now, we didn't get here by saying, okay, you know, we'll create this big Google campaign. We're running probably 40, 45 Google campaigns. And guess what? We actually ran 200 Google campaigns. A lot of them failed, a lot of them shut down, but we didn't waste a ton of money. Okay. Right. Today, we are operating at a CAC which is lower than the earlier CAC. But this could only happen because the founder said, you know what, I'm open to experimenting. Okay, we failed, but let's see what happens.
So it is a culture, right? It's a culture.
It's a culture. Growth is a culture. Yeah. You cannot grow exponentially without driving this right through and through. And also, what happens is, here's the interesting thing: the growth team says, "Hame ye banana hai. You know, we want to drive this. This is going to be the next big thing. Everyone's going to oversell." The tech team builds it. Now, if this project fails, the tech team also tends to get demotivated. Shit, I spent so much time on this. So, as marketeers and growth team members and product managers, our job is also to motivate the tech team. You say, you know what, we're going to give this our best. You know, there's a high probability it's going to do well, but it's not. You know what, we'll pick up a socks and we'll keep running again. And I think that's another job which the marketing and the product manager guys need to keep doing. Otherwise, you see a lot of sense of despair. And you know how startups are, right? We go through peaks and troughs. So it's a lot of internal management also you need to do.
Daman, one of the questions that we've got, and I'm just going to change topics a little bit. This comes from Chillai Ganesh, and he says, when you don't have a content writer in-house to write good content, how do you go about it? And is there a good way, to utilize content? Like, because we're talking about blogs, we're talking about campaigns, we're talking about, because you also need to be able to be good with words. His question is, how do you solve for that?
Okay, very, very good question. Because frankly, content and copy just elevates the game to the next level, just like creatives do. Because you can, I mean, that's where folks start getting deeper into the emotion of the brand, okay, other than just looking at the visuals. So there are 2-3 ways to do this, okay. When you say content is a very wide canvas. There is content which needs to go within the app or the website, which is the core content. There is the content which needs to go to the FAQ. There's content which needs to go to the blog, and content which needs to go in your creatives and marketing efforts, right? Core content is something which I think the founder and the core team really needs to delve in on their own. That is something which should never be outsourced, right? If you're going to outsource it, you really need to work as hard as the person who's working on the content for you. because obviously content writing is a skill. Okay, a lot of folks can do it better than you, but you need to make sure that it's going to be what your product stands for. Okay, stuff that can be outsourced are blogs, are articles which suppose you have to generate 7 blog articles a week. That's something which is physically impossible for the team internally to create. I tried doing that at MobiQuick, failed miserably. We had 10 different senior business leaders. We said, I need 1 article from everyone once a week. Didn't happen, failed in the first month alone. So then we hired a content writer in-house. So now the funda is the insight that a senior leader or a person who's more involved in the product and the process will be very different than what a content writer will write for you. You also have to understand what is the reason why you're doing content. Are you doing it for SEO? Fine, you can outsource it. Are you doing it for thought leadership? No, you can't outsource it. You need one of the core guys to start writing content for you. In terms of content for creatives, this is something which the marketing team needs to start building as a core skill. I have this funda called full stack marketeer. One of the horizontal blocks of a full stack marketeer is content. You have to be able to write copy. And there are tons of books available. One of my favorite books is it's called The Copywriting Book by Adweek. It's one of those college ka course wala kitab. I think the way they have taught how to write copy, I think they've nailed it. So I'll share that offline so that everyone can know what that book is. So stuff like this is what you need to figure out. The way I used to do it at MobiQuick, and again, we didn't have a content writer for a very long time, and I think we did some awesome content, was every week for a stand-up, one team member by rotation had to share the best copies that they found on the net. So it got them 7 days to figure out what are the favorite ads they found out, why they like the copy. And it had to be a very technical thing. It didn't say like, yeah, acha hai. Aisa nahi. It had to be, the words had to be circled, the paragraphs had to be circled saying that emotion, functional, thoughtful, stuff like that. And it didn't have to do anything with our brand. What happened is now there are 10 people on a stand-up, we are discussing copy, and that generates another 10 different ideas for us. And that goes into our growth sheet. You know what? We're going to write 2 blogs on building emotional connect. You know what? We're going to do 3 experiments with the creators. One is functional, one is emotional, and one is fear, and stuff like that. So it's a very collaborative process, and you do not need to just hire someone for content full time.
Awesome. Daman, so that's great insight. And, one of the things that we talk quite often with growth is experimenting and that mentality and all of that. One of the questions that have come in, by the way, we have a lot of product managers and marketers on this, on this AMA. So one of the questions that that has come in is, how do you run 10 to 15 experiments? This is a question by Rishabh. How do you run a 10 to 15 experiments in 1 week? What does a typical experiment look like?
Okay, very good question. Okay, so you remember the ICE framework, and I think it's already there in the charts: impact, confidence, ease of implementation. So you think about let's go back to the olden days wherein we would say, okay, there is acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral, the funnel. Okay. And today, and answering Vaidehi's question, today the marketeer is not just bothered with acquisition. He has to look at the entire funnel. Retention is the new acquisition, right? So the way you look at it is, you start listing experiments with respect to the funnel. Okay, let's say for acquisition, I want to run a referral experiment. Okay, which says, okay, I will give 100 rupees to the referrer and the referee. The next experiment is I want to try Snapchat as a user acquisition strategy. Third is in Google search, I also want to do RLSA ads. Okay. Fourth can be in YouTube video. I also want to do discovery ads using Google. So these starts coming up as experiments, and then you start saying, okay, you know what? For YouTube discovery, I'll need a budget of 50,000 because it's going to go over 5 days. It's going to have a learning phase. In the referral, This is what my hypothesis is. I've gone and spoken to the product team. It takes around 80, 90 man hours to build something like that, so on and so forth. And then you start writing outcomes next to each one of them, saying that this will increase my new users by X, this will increase my organic users by Y, and this is going to be my CAC, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now you have your probability of success, which is coming out basis a lot of this stuff, and you also have your outcomes. Then it becomes the job of the product manager and the founder to sit and say, okay, you know what, this is what we're gunning for in this quarter. We want to make sure we don't want more users because our ops is going out of out of whack. So let's try to focus on tightening the entire process. So for example, at Milk Basket, there was a point in time we said, you know what, we do not want to spend in acquiring more users, but we want the existing users to spend more, which means we wanted to increase our AOV, the average order value, or we wanted to increase our frequency. So then our growth experiments came around how to build discovery of new SKUs, how to figure out more deals with different partners who are selling on our platform with FMCG companies. So then you start building experiments around that. Now, you realize some of these experiments are going to take a week to build. Some of them are going to take 3 weeks to build, right? So you have a launch date against each one of them. And then you kind of figure out, in this week, I'll have 2 of them launching. And the next week, I'll have 10 of them launching. And then you start saying, okay, 15 experiments in a week is a bit too much. Let's time space it. And then you start spacing that out. And then over a period of time, this kind of becomes your cheat sheet. Let's say a marketing person has left the company and a new person has come in. And he says, you know what, let's try Google RLSA ad. You'll be like, no, we try kiya tha. We spent 50,000. This was the outcome. And this is why we failed. You think something new has happened in Google, or you think some environment has changed. Let's run this experiment again in a different format. So that's how you end up running experiments. And what happens is you keep impacting each part of the channel, each part of the funnel, sorry. Okay. And you and the founder will understand what is more imperative for you right now. Is it retention? Is it revenue? Or is it acquisition?
Daman, from the standpoint of running 10 experiments or each part of the funnel, etc., how do you attribute a delta in any of the impact areas from that experiment? How do you attribute it correctly?
Okay.
Right?
Okay. I should have covered this earlier. So one of the fun things working in marketing today is we get real-time feedback on goddamn everything. Okay. If I'm running a TVC and my TVC spots are, let's say, between 8 to 9 and there are 10 spots, I can see what is the uplift in new users that I've got during that time. I can see the delta in app opens. Okay. Now, the reason that can happen is because of 2 things. One is I have got telemetry built in. That means I have got signals being sent at every part of the funnel. Okay. So while you're developing your product today, it is equally important to build in telemetry, to build in signals. Okay. Which is your mobile analytics, something like Clever Tap or MoEngage, or use one of these guys. And you're feeling very rich, use Adobe or Salesforce.
Yeah.
It's very important to build this. The second part of this is visualization. If a marketing person has to go to tech to say, what's data kya hai? Did we do well or did we do bad? The marketing experiment just falls flat, because when you're running an experiment, make sure that your data is being fed into a Tableau or a Grafana dashboard. You have a data lake in place. So how you can do that? Make sure you get your data analytics team drunk, or give them chai or coffee, whatever is their favorite drink, because a marketing's best friend is the data guy. Okay. And you have to be true to data. Okay. If you're trying to massage the data to make yourself look successful, you're only going to be lying to yourself. So let's say you have telemetry in place, you've got data coming in, and the marketer can easily visualize, I ran this experiment, but this is showing me some other insight. For example, let's take Milk Basket insight. So we wanted more frequency to happen, right? So we said, and when people put a recurring order, which they usually do for a milk or a dairy product, usually milk. Okay, so we know ki matlab out of 30 days, 20 days, he's going to get milk, right? So, and whenever the milk is delivered, we send a notification to the user. Okay, we say, you know what? Let's also put in another SKU which we think he'll want to buy as a part of the notification, and we can increase the frequency. And we didn't see anything happen. You know why? Because the notification comes every day. That 7 o'clock in the morning, when you say milk is delivered, you don't even read the notification. You just swipe it and you lose it. Okay, so we said, you know what? Because we could see that and we could drive that inference pretty soon. We said, you know what? We'll send the notification 10 minutes after his milk notification goes by. Because he knows he swiped that, but he sees something else is coming in. He may think that he's ordered something else. So he might end up opening notification. So that then built another funnel for us. The reason we could do this was because we had data speaking to us. And the reason we could get this campaign running was because we had Clever Tap implemented. We could just click and say, okay, you know, right. People who have got a milk delivery today and who have no complaints, send them this. Because the milk packet fata hua, the last thing we want to sell him is something else. So such kind of stuff.
Do growth teams ever differentiate between growth, which is just getting in new customers, acquisition, versus retention, where people are probably happy doing their thing, going about it? Does the growth team get involved here, or do we say, okay, this is something that's completely part of a different channel? How does somebody think about that?
So think of growth as the intersection of a Venn diagram between marketing, product, and data. Okay, so it encompasses these three areas. Traditionally, marketers' ka job tha TVC dikhao, show something on a newspaper ad, get users onto the platform, and then we'll look at now the product guys will look at it. No, now today the growth guy is in charge of getting the user onto the platform, making sure he's going to the revenue point, referring other users, and ensuring it doesn't churn. So a growth person needs to be able to predict, okay, this guy is going to churn. I need to make sure I do something special for him, or I need to make sure if something's gone wrong with him, how do I get that sorted out? So it's the entire funnel. And a growth person needs to start building growth engines, right? So for every one user coming in, he has to refer who gets a new person, so on and so forth. And similarly for revenue, and similarly for a lot of the other things.
So in that scenario, what we're saying is that growth is not just user or headcount.
No, that is just,
it's about,
that's just 10% of a job. Spending money is just 10% of a growth person's job.
I mean, it's easy to spend money, right? It's hard to earn money.
Yeah, definitely.
From the maybe from your experience or from your understanding, you said you're a self-taught growth marketer, right? Or a growth individual. How one of the questions that came in, via other form is, how do you keep up to date? Like, who are your go-to people to understand, growth? Does it change by industry? Because I mean, the questions we typically end up asking are, okay, which tools to use? What are the various aspects? Because a lot of these are subjective, right? Like, for example, what works for Milk Basket is a Clever Tap, right? What may not work for HDFC Bank is Clever Tap, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about that, and how do you keep your learning aligned?
Okay. So growth as a function actually got formalized in the days of Facebook after a period in time, right? A lot of the frameworks, a lot of the thought process were built in, I would say around 2011, 12. That's when growth as a function actually got created. Uske pehle there was no growth function. Uske pehle it was just whatever works. And since then, a lot of literature has been written, right? I closely follow the likes of Andrew Chen and Brian Balfour. These are the two my go-to guys. Awesome. And they run a growth program in the US called Reforge, which is a growth training school. And these guys write a lot of frameworks which have helped me figure out whether I want to do A versus B, right? Besides this, I think the amount of content that has been generated around growth and each one of the different problems over the last decade has been enormous. So if you want to do conversion rate optimization, for example, right? If you got a landing page, what are the 50 different ways that I can play around with a landing page? Or if you want to create a growth journey, there's tons of literature available online. Yeah, what is an issue is it's not structured, because you may find one particular blog in a good area. So what I do is I have this 15-20 folders on growth, right, which speaks about each one of these topics in a very concentrated way. And the good thing is, whenever I see a good marketing automation or a growth tool, I bookmark it. And just like in the spirit of experimentation, I think you should experiment with a lot of tools also. Okay, some of the new guys. So we started using CleverTab in India when hardly anyone was using. I started using AppsFlyer in India. I think I was the first or second customer in India. I started using HasOffers. I was actually the HasOffers first customer in India. And all this kind of stuff happens is when you work with smaller companies on marketing tools, they will develop the product tailored to you, right? And it may be more cost efficient also, but also it can also bomb. Okay, so if you are willing to be hands-on with certain amount of tools and you want a certain set of tools which are industry grade, I think you should have a mix and match of both, which can help you get going. Now, you do not need to pay for all the tools initially. There's ample. If you're starting out, there are ample tools which are available for free. Start out with them. At the end of the 5th or 6th month, I kid you not, you will not be spending more than $150 to $200 on all your marketing automation tools put together today. You do not need to go after an elephant. And there's a life cycle to this, right? You cannot implement the entire. So read about the growth technology stack. Okay, it's again across the funnel. There's a whole lot of tools there around. So this entire Martech has around 20,000 companies today. Okay, so it's a lot of mishmash, but each of them solves a particular problem. So it's a journey. If you're focusing more on user acquisition, okay, I need to get my attribution tool upfront. If you're more of a enterprise tool who's going to do direct sales, you want to do more of video-based content in-house. So you want a video SDK, or you want a referral tool kind of a built-in. So you'll kind of go from one phase to the other. You want a customer unification tool, something like a segment, you'll probably want it a year down the line. So have a roadmap in place. Okay, talk to other growth practitioners who've used a lot of these tools, and you will get a feeling of what they're good for. So the good question to ask is not whether this ye tool acha hai. The good question to ask is, what does this tool not do? Right? And that's where you know that whether you want this tool or not. I think, and that will help you to get to go pinpoint to a smaller tool.
Daman, because you love frameworks, how do you? Because a lot of tools do the same thing as well, right? A lot of the time, it's the price point you're willing to pay and what features you get to access with that. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm getting a few questions from Sumit and a few others on which tools to use, and I'm guessing I'm going to say. Go to Daman's blog. I think he archives a lot of that stuff there. If you have any other place, Daman, please share. But I think the question I specifically have is, how do you, evaluate tools? Because for me, as a founder, even when I was running teams, etc., when whoever was working with me to help me with growth, they would come back and say, "Hey, these are the 5 tools we could use to solve this problem." Right? Mm-hmm. But we never had a good framework to evaluate. Okay. Right? And how do I say one is better than the other?
Okay. So there are a number of factors. Okay. Just let me get that link only for you for all the guys over here. Okay.
So there's different factors in which
So I've shared a link by segment on the chat window, which says the tools of today aren't the tools of tomorrow. Okay. this gives, so what this particular blog tells you is how different companies, from the Airbnbs of the world to enterprise companies, evolved from using one particular tool to all the tools. And what are the different tool users personas? There are some guys, like you said, we need 5 tools.
Yeah.
And there are some guys, let's start with one tool and then let's add on to the next one. And then there are some guys who do a rip and replace. A new growth head will come in, all these tools are crap. I want my stack because I'm comfortable with them, or something like that. So there's no right answer to it. The pragmatic way is to build a couple of tools at a time. Okay. Because there's also a learning curve attached to it. Also, what happens is some tools are so niche that you will not find folks in the market who know how to use these tools. So you'll also spend a lot of time training a lot of these guys. Okay, today WebEngage, CleverTap, these tools are pretty prevalent. For example, Zapier. Okay, that's my go-to tool. When I don't have money, I just take Zapier and I connect to platforms and get on with
Plug it in.
Yeah. So I call these glue tools. But there isn't a lot of, so there's a very short learning curve associated with such tools. So till the time I reach 10,000 users, I know Zapier will continue. Nothing's going to break. It can scale. Okay. If I don't have a database, I'll say, okay, let me just put $5 and get Airtable, and get on with it. So it all depends on what kind of so let's say, so even at Milk Basket, so here's what happens, right? In today's world, we do not need the permission from a CEO to get a tool into the company.
The entry point is very low.
You can easily take out a credit card, swipe $5, and expense that. Okay. No HR head is going to say, you bought a tool for $5. Who gave you permission? Okay. You just say, okay, I saved you from hiring 3 people, and that's what's happening. Okay, today. So if you feel there's a tool which is good, introduce that into. Obviously, you have to make sure security protocols are taken care of. Get the tool into the system, see what's happening, and democratize tool discovery. Believe me, like if you let your teams, they have worked in different companies, they have had different colleagues in the past. They'll see one particular tool which solves a point problem. Go with an open mind. Run that as another experiment. Give him 3 days. He's like, you know what? You can automate this. Get your tool, automate this. Let's figure out how it is. And from that one thing leads to the other, and then you'll kind of find a fit of what kind of tools. So, for example, when I launched my blog, it's today's the 100th day of my blog. I used 6
Congratulations.
tools. I used 6 tools in that blog. Okay, I used Mailchimp, Wix. Then we used a couple of. I used Zapier for a couple of things, and I used a couple of forms, and we were on with it. Okay. Now I know. Okay, fine. I probably will need a couple of tools more later on, because right now I'm putting a bit of commerce behind it. So then I keep evolving. For example, today even Razorpay is a tool. You can start your e-commerce site using a Razorpay payment page, rather than signing up for the payment gateway altogether and doing an integration. So it all depends on what part of a journey that you are in.
Yeah, if you have fewer SKUs, you could use a Razorpay or an InstaMojo or anything. If you want to try something specifically, maybe you can mask the URL with your own domain name, etc., and still handle that transaction.
Yep.
Daman, we have reached the last few minutes of the AMA. I think we've had 20 plus people who've been with us throughout this time. Are there any specific instances that you can share from your experience that this one small hack resulted in a 100x growth? And how you got that insight? I mean, it could be translatable. It may not be translatable, but it could be that one magic bullet they can go back with. I know you're going to say there's no magic bullet, but
no, I'll give you a few hacks. Okay, I'll tell you some very interesting things. Okay, so at MobiKwik we did a very interesting thing. When you go to an Android phone and you go to the users, when you open your contact book and you look at the user, it shows you the phone number of the user and the address. And what a lot of guys didn't know at that point in time is you could show the other apps that can use the user. So if you go over there, MobiKwik, we integrated MobiKwik over there. so moment, let's say I open up Varun's contact, it shows transfer money to Varun or charge Varun's phone just with one click over there. So this hack alone got us around 1,500 transactions a day with just a week's work. Okay, wow. So this is something which did pretty awesome. Another interesting thing on referral. I think referral is one of my favorite topics. We often just stop at referral by saying, okay, you know what, Daman can refer. Daman, why don't you refer Varun? So I go onto the app, I click refer. Varun gets a WhatsApp message and an email, and after that, Daman doesn't know anything about Varun. Okay, some apps go to the next level and say, okay, you know what, one of your friends has registered. Okay, and that's about it. What stops you from putting a button onto my app and says remind Varun? You know what, he's registered, he's not become a paid user. Okay, and so today that is possible, right? I can click here, and because Varun's got my app installed, a notification can go to Varun from the server which says, you know what, Daman's reminding you to pay up. Another thing on referral that we did in MailBasket. In MailBasket, we decided not to incentivize the referrer. Like I'm referring Varun, we should not give no money. Because what is happening is, you have to understand the consumer psyche here. I'm referring my neighbor. Yep. If my neighbor thinks that I'm trying to earn $200 from him, he's going to be to chindi hai. So what we decided is, we'll give the neighbor some gifts worth 200 rupees. So we said, you know, sign up for MailBasket and get your housewarming pack. You know, so a lot of stuff like this actually caused a step change for us. And these things come up with a lot of consumer insight, with a lot of, you know, brainstorming and stuff like that.
Awesome. The last question I have, Daman, maybe you can cap it off with that, is, you know, we talk a lot about reviews. You know, if you look at Amazon, you know, pretty much reviews drive a lot of purchase behavior. One of the things that we talk about on the podcast is social proof, and you know, reviews are a great source of social proof. Now, are there any techniques you use to solicit such reviews?
That may not be obvious. Okay.
I mean, yeah, you know, if it's possible, yeah.
Okay, so see, every company, so all these platforms, they have their rules, right? That you cannot pay people for reviews, you cannot give freebies for reviews and stuff like that. But there are a lot of hacks around it. Okay, when you are sending a package, you say you send thank you, right? You can come up with a really innovative way to say also give us a review. Give us a review in that. Is there any other way for you to capture the email ID of the person? Okay, if that is the case, then obviously you can have a whole review journey. So for example, we at MobiKwik used to have a review funnel at any point in time. We had a review target for a month. Itne reviews chahiye. Oh, wow. So the way we used to do that is that we used to have review interventions. So for example, we knew that the aha moment in the app comes 2 or 3 times. Okay, so that's the time when we want to do. So I'll give you another MailBasket example. In MailBasket, we used to ask for a review on the first successful order because we knew that was the aha moment. Okay, and the second time we used to ask a review was when we spilled the milk. The first time we delivered milk in which the packet was leaking, the customer would get very angry. Okay, he'll be like, oh shit, doodh phata hua aaya hai. So he will go to the app, he'll go to the help section, and he'll say, you know, I want my money back. And the money back comes within a minute, no questions asked. Right. Okay, and that used to be an aha moment. And you know what the message used to come? You know what, we are sorry. This happened once. We hope you like the experience, give us a review. So that's another time when we used to get a review. So a growth marketer's job is also to make sure that, you know, the feedback, the social proof mechanism, whichever way it is, likes, reviews, comments, ratings, they are a part, a separate funnel tracking is built for that. Because, you know, in today's world, like Varun said, you know, that kind of sells. Also, there are companies which, so Typeform, everyone's aware of that, I guess. Yeah. It's the form tool. Typeform has a video review cartoon. So you can integrate it within your site or your app, and you can say, give us a review. The user can record a review, and guess what? You can create a video out of that. Okay. Before I end this, one final thing. Reviews are a very good way to write copy. You may come up with good MBA long words, but the stuff that people write in review, look at that and you'll get excellent copy to write for your product. And if you see the same words getting repeated again, you're like, okay, this needs to go in the copy. Definitely, no questions asked.
So that means that those words are resonating with the customer, and hence that will probably be the best copy you could make.
Yeah, that's the customer's language. I can say incentivize and use nice words, but the customer can say, how much am I getting? So you can say we will, instead of you get an incentive of 100 rupees, you can say you get 100 rupees richer. There's your copy.
Awesome. Hey, guys, thank you for participating in this AMA. Daman's website is here. You can reach him easily by that. He's also extremely accessible via Twitter. And I'm sure he loves a lot of these challenges that you pose to him. You can always tweet at him or email daman@damansoni.com, I guess.
Damansoni@gmail.com. Sure. I'll just share it here. No worries. Okay.
Awesome. Well, we're getting some rave reviews. Hopefully we can copy the reviews also from our chat to use for promoting our future AMAs of World of Webinar. Sumit, you want to cap it off? Before I hand it over to Sumit, guys, please subscribe to Stars and Startups podcast. We have a Substack, which is stars.substack.com, which I will also send to all of those who've signed up for this AMA, just in case I can increase my subscriber base. Sumit and World Webinar, thanks for having us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Varun. Thank you so much, Daman. Thanks to all the amazing participants for sitting around. It's as someone just said, I think Craig just said that an hour just passed already and we never realized it. I mean, that's what happens, the time paradox. You don't really feel it when it's amazing, but you do feel a second when it's not. So thanks guys. I've just shared a feedback link in the chat. Please do give us a feedback. What you liked, what you did not like, what you would want to see going forward, areas of improvement, if you wanted more questions. While thank you so much, Varun, for taking up all the questions. There was one question which Rhythm asked towards the end about 0 to 1 startups. Maybe Rhythm connect with Daman or Varun or me, and we can have a longer discussion on that. With that note, thank you so much.
Can I leave a...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Can I comment on the color of your t-shirt and give you a feedback?
Go ahead.
No. I'm just kidding.
So yeah, that's for everyone. Thank you so much. The recording would be available inside the World of Webinar app, but the native app is going to come out soon. Till then, please bear with us the PWA that I've written myself. It's a poor piece of code, but yeah, you got to do what you got to do. On that note, thank you so much. Have a great Friday evening. Thanks, Daman. Thanks, Varun. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah.